Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Geshe.
Morning.
Just make a quick introduction.
Please.
Welcome to this continuation of this Dharma Friend of Israel course. My name is Tomer. I will be the host. Our teacher is Geshe Kelsang Wangmo, and we'll continue teaching us on Buddha nature. So I remind you that this is being streamed live to YouTube, where you can watch previous recording, also previous courses of Dharma Friends, particularly previous courses in the Buddhism A to Z program, which this teaching is part of that program. So if you feel like you want to see more of what we've been up to so far, you can find the recordings in DFI Israel in YouTube. If it's possible, please turn on your camera. It would be very nice for all of us to see everyone. The material for this course is in the course page on the Dharma Friend website. In the bottom of the page, I will also send it out to the chat. And finally, as you notice, there is no price tag for our activities, since they're done only by volunteers and financed only by donation. So if you wish to practice generosity and donate for the teacher of the course and the continuation of our activities, you can do so with either PayPal or bank transfer. And the details I will send through chat. You can also find them in the course page on the Dharma Friend website. So that is all from me now. So I wish us all an interesting and beneficial teaching. Thank you very much, Geshe, for teaching us, and we can take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Tomer. Well, welcome back, everyone. I just had this little message on my screen. It said your internet connection is unstable. And Tomer was gone for a few seconds. I'm not sure if this happened to you too. So I can't fix it right now. I'll have to wait until this session is over. But if suddenly I'm gone, bear with me. I'll try to sign in again and try to fix the problem. Okay. All right. So to start, get back to the topic of study. We're going through a lot of details on Buddha nature today, and in order to make the most out of it, as I mentioned yesterday, just psychologically, there are certain states of mind that are really conducive for fully apprehending, fully understanding the Dharma. And in order to generate those states of mind, so the mind of being inspired, kind of a devotional kind of mind on one hand, and of course, even more important, great compassion, altruism, the altruistic attitude of bodhicitta. So in order to generate them, we'll do a meditation together. And then in that way, be best prepared for what is to come today. Great. Am I still there? I'm still there, right? You can still hear me? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Okay. So if I'm suddenly gone, sorry, just continue meditating, I'll catch up. Okay, so let's start. As usual, we usually start with some breathing meditation, just to let go of any disruptive thoughts and to be fully focused on what is to come. And then visualize in this space in front of you, Buddha Shakyamuni. Who's not only a manifestation of all the good qualities that we can attain ourselves, but he's also symbolic for the other Buddhas and the great Bodhisattvas. And he's inseparable from your personal Llama. Think that the Buddha is seated on a large lotus flower on which there's a sun disk and a moon disk. He's wearing the saffron-colored robes of a bhikshu, fully ordained monk. His left hand holds a begging bowl, and his right hand is in a gesture of touching the earth. With his legs being crossed in the Vajra position. And even if it doesn't appear clearly to your mind, just feel his presence. And then think, surrounding you are all sentient beings. With all their different types of problems and sufferings. And of course, with their numerous different afflictive emotions caused by their rude ignorance of holding on to inherent intrinsic existence. And then remember that despite their different forms, different cultures, different religion, or even different realms that they come from, they're all the same as ourselves in that they want to be happy and not to experience suffering. And that, like ourselves, they all deserve to be happy. We all deserve to be happy. And out of our misapprehension, do we constantly create the causes of suffering? And then, aware of that, generate affectionate love that is a feeling of affection that is accepting of all these different living beings. That finds them endearing and lovable. And has a sense of closeness towards each one of them. And then take a moment, particularly focusing on the fact that there is so much suffering. All these beings have so many problems. So much pain and fear. While aware of that, generate the sincere aspiration, may they be free from all their sufferings. Lasting happiness of liberation. May I personally be able to protect them from all these obstructions by helping them to find this state of liberation. To generate that aspiration with your heart full of affectionate love for all these beings. And then as this aspiration grows stronger, it turns into the determination. I will do whatever I can, and however long it takes, to work towards helping sentient beings to free themselves from all their suffering and its causes. That is, from everything that is obstructing them from attaining the state of liberation. And that way you generate the altruistic attitude. And that then gives rise to, or gives way to, the mind of enlightenment, based on the knowledge that right now we're so limited in what we can do for others. And therefore give rise to the aspiration, may I become fully enlightened. May I become a Buddha, in order to be able to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. May I become just like the Buddha in the space in front of me. Just like these other great enlightened beings. So that one day my mere presence will ease sentient beings' suffering. And then without letting go of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, let's recite the prayers together while concentrating on the meaning of the words that we recite. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the positive accumulation I gather by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the positive accumulation I gather by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the positive accumulation I gather by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated for happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in a community free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. The 7 limb prayer practice. Reverently, I pray with my body, speech, and mind and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my negative actions accumulated since the beginner's time and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and orderly beings. Please remain until cycle the distant ends and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to enlightenment.
Okay, thank you, Laura. I was suddenly gone, but I was signed in right away, but I couldn't unmute myself. Somehow I couldn't find my picture, and Laura very kindly took over, so we're able to complete the fast part. Okay, wonderful. So this will probably happen again. Let's see how it goes. I want to finish the session and then I'll take care of it in the break. But I'll keep watching the screen to make sure I notice. Okay. So, remember yesterday we talked about Buddha nature yesterday, in particular the different views on what Buddha nature was. You've probably seen, well, what we went through yesterday wasn't that difficult to understand. We still have a little bit to go in the text, and there are some more difficult aspects that I'll try to address. But just to remind you, we spoke about Buddha nature as it is asserted in the other philosophical, the lower philosophical schools of those, the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika, which don't even call it Buddha nature. They speak of Arya nature. They speak of a type of mind, Arya nature as in like a type of potential that some living beings have, many living beings have, and that enables them to realize the ultimate nature of phenomena in order to become liberated. And as we've heard, there are 3 characteristics, 3 attributes you need to have from the point of view of your livelihood, basically how you live in order to generate renunciation that show you have this Arya nature. So being satisfied with with simple dwelling, with a simple place to live in, being satisfied with simple clothing, and being satisfied with simple food. Now it's explained from the point of view of a monk or a nun, but it can also be, well, because it's mainly seen in those schools that it's seen that monks and nuns are the ones who should practice to become liberated. I've just told it a little bit more general, but yeah, so this is how it's actually presented. And then the 4th characteristic is joy in meditating, joy in eliminating whatever needs to be eliminated in order to become liberated. So as I said early on, this explanation, of course, is not accepted by the highest school. There are certain aspects we need to negate, we need to dismiss, and then there are aspects that are still helpful. They help us in our own practice. So it helps us to see whether if this is necessary for Arya nature, well, it makes sense that this is something we can acquire. It's something we can train ourselves in, and something that is helpful in our practice. Okay. And then there's, of course, Buddha nature, and of course, the other bits that are explained here. This is not Arya nature. This is not Buddha nature. These are just certain attributes. So that part gets dismissed in terms of that being Arya or even Buddha nature. Plus, that only monks and nuns can become liberated. Again, not accepted. Then we have Buddha nature is explained by the Chittamatra school. And here it refers to seeds, which is just another way of saying a potential, the potential in our mind, naturally abiding Buddha nature, already using the same terminology as the Prasangika school, with naturally abiding Buddha nature referring to the seeds in our continuum before we nourish them by way of listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma, and the seeds in that same continuum, once we've done so, once we have nourished them through listening and so forth, they become evolving Buddha nature. And so we've also in that context discussed awakening Buddha nature. I ask you to think about what does it mean, in particular, to awaken the Mahayana Buddha nature. Having awakened, and being endowed, possessing Buddha nature, and not just that, possessing Hira nature or solitary realizer nature, or even Mahayana nature. So that's explained in the section on the Chittamatra school. And then we have the Madhyamika system with the Svatantrika and Prasangika. Explain those two together here. And they're quite similar in terms of what the terminology is the same. The seeds are accepted. So, except they don't put the emphasis on, they wouldn't say that naturally evolving Buddha nature refers to the seeds, that potential. And even with evolving Buddha nature, they consider it to be mainly the mind, mainly consciousness is evolving Buddha nature. Okay, just tells me my internet connection is unstable. So it'll stay with me. Anyway, so this is pretty straightforward, and of course we talked about a few other things. But let's now return to the text. So far, where we got to, I mean, there's quite a bit of explanation that you can read on your own, and hopefully it's clear enough. But what I've done with this booklet, and I mentioned it before, is I really put together everything the way I would put it together if I studied this in Tibetan. So all the information that we had at our exposure, like that we would use, I just kind of collected and put it together and translated it into English, gave a few explanations, but it's really the original material. And as you see, it's very complex. It doesn't read like a novel. It's not exciting. It doesn't even read like the Lamrim, which is meant to inspire, which is meant to kind of move you and motivate you to continue reading. This is a style of writing. This is a style of teaching that is meant to also enhance your understanding. Now, oftentimes the way the Dharma is set forth, the way it was set forth to us. So we didn't really read many Lamrim texts. I mean, they're not really difficult to understand. So you read them at your own time. You try to, of course, bring your understanding of the Lamrim into your understanding of philosophy, because that's so crucial. Our teachers remind us of that all the time. However, within the context of the formal study we did, this study was like an app. Like a computer app, like training your mind, these little apps that you find, Einstein app, and I don't know, train your brain app, and what have you. There's so many of them. And these apps are such, they train different parts of your intelligence. I don't know, memorizing and quick thinking and logical thinking and structured thinking and the usage of language and so forth. Now, this really reminds me of this, the style of study that we went through, because it addresses these different aspects, and that's not always enjoyable. I mean, it's hard work. Memorization, of course. I mean, some of these aspects, when you read like a page, sometimes it's like, what did it say in the very beginning? It's so difficult to get through. You forget what it said in the first line, right? So just holding on to the argument and not losing that, that's already quite challenging. All right, so then that's that. And not just that, on top of that, well, follow this train of thought. Okay, so if this is the case, then that follows. And if that follows, then this follows. I mean, I've really added a lot of explanation. Trust me, 50% of what I added, probably 70% is not even in the original text. You need to read between the lines and figure out how did they get from A to B. So again, it really challenges your mind. It challenges a different part of your intelligence, of your brain, if you like. And that is great in making the mind more flexible. It's all about making the mind more flexible in just these different ways. And it also, what it does, it brings in lots of other ideas. Why? Because when we study Buddhism, my apologies. Can you hear me again? That was quick. That was suddenly gone. Okay. So think each topic you study is like studying one puzzle piece. Now, no surprise, you studied one puzzle piece. And once that puzzle piece, you finish that topic, you put it aside and there's a new puzzle piece. And before long, the first puzzle piece, you have no idea what was it all about, right? So now the challenge is therefore to study puzzle piece number 7 and remember what puzzle pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what they were teaching. And also get used to puzzle piece number 135, puzzle piece number 400. And so with each topic, other things are brought in to kind of see the connection between all the other puzzle pieces, right? See how they're all connected, and also not forget about this and that and so forth, and focus mainly on one particular topic, but bring in other ideas as well. So you learn a lot of other things at the same time. And then you go and debate it with each other, right? I mean, just reading sometimes 2 pages, I mean, it's a day's work. I remember just reading 2 or 3 pages. If I had a day off and I was preparing maybe for the next day, I'd be busy just with this. It's a great practice in patience. I mean, it's kind of like, and initially I was like, why do they have to write like that? Can I not make it? I'd be like upset. I'd be like angry with the author. He could have really put it a little clearer or something. So I had to really learn, watch my own mind. Are you kidding me? Who am I angry with? I'm angry with the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas here, these great masters. Whoa, better be careful. So be patient. All right, I read it, don't understand the word. Never mind. Patient with myself, being patient with the facts. I really don't understand anything. Well, that's fine. There's so much I don't know. So that's just the way it is. I'll read it again. Okay. Oh, I understood 3 words now. Right? Of all these 100 words, I understood 3 words. Oh, that's more than nothing. Okay. And then maybe read it again and read it again. And see, do I have a question? Questions are always good. It shows, right? If there's something you don't understand anything, you don't even have a question, that's not a good sign. So if I ask questions, if I say, you have a question, you have no question, I'm wondering, are you at that stage? Like, understand nothing. So not even a question to be formulated. Okay, but anyway. So then there's one question. I don't understand anything, but there's one question, and so forth. So then you write down these questions, you make notes, and eventually it reveals itself. It becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And all this is part of the training. It's all part of practicing patience with yourself, patience with the way it's written, going through the notions of repetition. It's not the most exciting thing. No, if I want to be entertained, I don't watch a movie 10 times in a row. Of course not, right? And I certainly don't read something like that. It's not exciting. It's not entertaining upon first reading it. It can become exciting and entertaining depending on what you do with it, but it requires effort. So you see, the study as we do it, they're so complex. There's so much to it. And of course, it should be carried by devotion and inspiration and gratitude on one hand towards the great authors and so forth, and also be carried by compassion and love. With these two states of mind, your mind is peaceful, it's relaxed, it's joyful, and you're much more open towards receiving the information. All right, having said all that, let's dive into it. I mean, I'm not going to torture you. I mean, we don't have much time anyway, but just a few aspects of this particular text. So I chose a few bits this morning. I went through it. I made some notes, the bits I want to introduce to you, and the rest you could do on your own. All right. Now, one bit that's on page 35 I thought to mention. So we're now focused on the Madhyamika view. Madhyamika, actually, this is not specifically, the text here is actually more directed at the Svatantrika Madhyamika view, but as I taught it, I included both aspects, also the Prasangika. I didn't differentiate here, so we can easily take it from the Prasangika school point of view. It's just the way we did the study at the time as part of the study of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. It's usually done from the point of view, the Prajnaparamita Sutras in the way presented by Maitreya. It's done just from the Madhyamika Svatantrika school point of view, which is helpful to get familiar with the school as part of the study. So it's kind of like you don't just study the Prajnaparamita Sutras, that is the hidden meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, but at the same time you become familiar with this particular philosophical school. It's kind of like killing two birds with a stone, if you like. So, and then once you study another text, the explicit meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras by way of studying Chandakirti's entry into the middle way, then it's mainly Prasangika. But everything can be explained that is in the text. Well, everything that is part of the study of the hidden meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras can also be explained from the point of view of the Prasangika, so which is what I'm doing here mainly. Okay. So here, as in here in this text, Pension Taba explains that there's this idea of the support and the supported, the basis and that which it is based on. Very important Buddhist concept. So since if you have the interest to study Buddhism further, get used to it. Get used to this idea. It comes up all the time. The support, that which is the support of the basis, the foundation that carries something else. All right. So if naturally abiding Buddha nature is described on page 35 of the handout. It's described in the last paragraph as the support of the evolving Buddha nature. All right. So it kind of makes sense. It's the support of the, but I mean, well, what's confusing is you can see it also the other way around. You can see the evolving Buddha nature as the support of the naturally abiding Buddha nature from a different perspective. But here, taking it from another perspective, the perspective that is that the emptiness is the support of the mind. So the emptiness of the mind is the support of the mind. It's the foundation of the mind. Well, yeah, that makes sense. If it wasn't empty, if the mind didn't lack inherent existence, the mind couldn't function, right? So from that point of view, from that perspective, here it says that naturally abiding Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of our mental consciousness in our own case, that is the support, that is the foundation for our mental consciousness. Okay. But there's a different way to see it, that our mental consciousness is the support, is the basis for its own emptiness. In what way is that true? Anyone? Any suggestion? In what way can we say that the mental consciousness is the support or is the basis for, here I'd rather use the word basis, so the basis for its own emptiness? Anything comes to mind? Anyone raise your hand, your virtual hand? No one?
Because emptiness is emptiness of something. It's not by itself. It's not. It doesn't inherently exist.
Very good. Yeah, it doesn't exist inherently, so it must be based on something. It's not emptiness that's like in the sky somewhere. Oh, now I see a virtual hand. It's in the tankas. I couldn't see it before. Anyway, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. There's a way in which we can say the basis for emptiness, for the emptiness of the mind, is the mind itself. That's the basis for emptiness, as like the Dongqi Chujin, like that which emptiness is based upon. Yeah, so from that perspective, you're absolutely right. However, here it's seen from a different perspective, as just mentioned. So, all right, great. And so we have basically had that. Benjamin Dabra is saying, well, in other words, it's the basis, because of course, without sorry, which part did you miss? A part? What were my last words?
Yes, the few last sentences, you were frozen.
I was frozen. Oh, okay. Oh gosh. All right. Anyway, so is this part missing? In other words, the mental consciousness advances and progresses. Did that show before? Was that? No? Okay. So I say it again. In what way does the emptiness of our mental consciousness, in what way is that the support of the mental consciousness itself? Well, first of all, because, and I said that early on, because our mind lacks inherent existence, therefore, because it lacks inherent existence, therefore, our mind can change, can transform. And not just that, as it says, a mental consciousness advances and progresses in dependence on perceiving its own lack of inherent existence. All right? So the way the mind most powerfully can transform and come closer to Buddhahood is by understanding its own emptiness. Not just its own emptiness, but also the emptiness of other phenomena. All right. Okay. Then it says here, quoting Maitreya in his ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, a text His Holiness just recently, well, actually didn't teach, was meant to teach. I was sure someone would teach it. 800 verses. I translated all of them. And I had to laugh about myself. Sitting there with this text took me forever. And His Holiness didn't teach it. But anyway, now there are different translations available. The other translators also translated it. Anyway, so Maitreya said in this ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, natural and evolved, support and supported. So here you have the quote for that. They exist and do not exist. Their qualities should be known to be for the sake of freeing sentient beings. All right, so Buddha nature, of course, Maitreya is one of the great masters who really set forth Buddha nature very extensively. The meaning of these 4 lines is that naturally abiding Buddha nature is the support, and evolving Buddha nature is that which is supported. The 2 types of Buddha nature exist in the continuum of sentient beings and not in the continuum of Buddhas. No, in a Buddha, you don't have Buddha nature in a Buddha. That sounds a little contradictory, like, what? Buddha doesn't have Buddha nature. But of course, what we mean with Buddha nature is that potential to become a Buddha, or it's that which you need when you're not a Buddha yet to become a Buddha. So obviously Buddha doesn't have that, right? It's become a Buddha. So in that sense, yeah, Buddha has the nature of being enlightened. He's a Buddha, but doesn't have Buddha nature. So, and their qualities are that that they facilitate the attainment of liberation and enlightenment. So that's considered an important quote. And then describing and again, the next part, so there are a few verses. I don't believe we need to mention them. That's all right. It just explains why naturally abiding Buddha nature is also called the essence of the one thus gone. I think that's it's obvious from the different quotes. So I just like to bring these quotes in, but yeah, well, if you can read them on your own, I don't need to read them. And then on page 37, you find this explanation, the signs of having awakened Buddha nature. So we've spoken about this before, awakening Buddha nature, okay? Awakening hero nature, awakening solitary realizer nature, awakening Mahayana nature, and awakening Buddha nature. Remember this explanation? It was from the point of view of the Chittamatra school, but there's not much difference in the Madhyamika system. So the same thing awakens. So whatever is accepted to be to awaken the hero nature, well, that's accepted in the Madhyamika school in the same way as in the Chittamatra school. So what is it? Well, it's not that clear. Whatever leads to the awakening, I guess, like a special interest in the Hinayana, in the Hira system, or a special interest you develop in the solitary realizer teachings or system. And so the Mahayana, we've heard, awakening the Mahayana nature means to generate great compassion. Okay, so you still have time to think about it. Why is it that particular mind? Why is it not bodhicitta? Why is it not maybe affectionate love, where you focus on all sentient beings and you generate great affection for them? So why is it none of those? Why great compassion? I'll still keep it open for you to think about it in the break time. Anyway, but that we've heard, that's what it means. So what is the difference between awakening Mahayana nature and awakening Buddha nature? Is there a difference? Awakening Mahayana nature and awakening Buddha nature. Do you think there's a difference? Anyone? I don't see everyone, so I don't see if you raise your little hand. Maybe just unmute yourself and just, oh, now I've got everyone. Now I can see everyone. Okay. Now I can't see everyone, but I see everyone's names at least. Anyone? Any idea? What's the difference between awakening Buddha nature and awakening Mahayana nature? Is there a difference?
I have a guess. Maybe it's wrong. That okay. For awakening Mahayana nature, we need great compassion and maybe bodhicitta. And for awakening Buddha nature, we also need to add in emptiness, some realization of it, or thinking about it, considering it.
Okay, all right. Well, unfortunately, who was right? Naomi Benza was right, because she nodded when I say, oh, they're the same, and she did. They're this, well, maybe she shook her hand when I said, oh, they're not the same, whatever. Anyway, I remember thinking that was the correct gesture. No, unfortunately, Tome, it's brilliant. I mean, it sounds really good, but actually, usually they're considered to be the same. So that awakening Mahayana nature and awakening Buddha nature, it's all great compassion. When you have great compassion, you awaken your Buddha nature, you awaken your Mahayana nature. All right. And again, why? The question still remains. All right. Okay. So, I mean, awaken Mahayana nature, Buddha nature in a certain way. Mahayana nature, it does mainly refer to becoming a Buddha. So you awaken that. It's like it's there the whole time, and now you awaken it. Well, in particular through this one type of mind. That one type of mind makes a huge difference. I mean, everything changes. Why? With great compassion. Why does not everything change with some of the other states of mind? Right? What is it? Okay, anyway, you've got time to talk about it later. Anyway, so what are the signs? Well, the signs have been explained before, really, in terms of well, they're really difficult. I guess for ourselves, it's much easier to see if we have, well, first of all, great compassion, the case of great compassion, but being moved every time we hear Mahayana teachings. They say like you're moved to tears, your hairs are standing on end. Now it's always like the same sentence, basically. You're good, tears filling your eyes and the hairs stand on end. It's this sentence in Tibetan, this classic sentence. But I think we need to explain this a little bit. It's like, wow, you're so moved by these teachings on compassion, and that's all you want to do, right? I mean, you still do other stuff, you still eat and you still drink, and of course, but what's most important in your life? What's the center of your life? Well, it's that, right? And so when we started this teaching, of course, I tried to go through this motion of generating bodhicitta, generating great compassion and so forth. But as part of another teaching that I give every Sunday, I try to encourage everyone to continue with this throughout the week, to just grow this habit again and again and again and again, however artificial it seems. And not only am I trying, of course, that you awaken your Mahayana nature, but that's a little bit in the future. I mean, I don't know how strong your great compassion has become, how whether it's real, like whether it's artificial or spontaneous. Spontaneous or artificial, we distinguish between those two. There's like that is the uncontrived. It's called uncontrived great compassion. And then there's contrived, like trying to make it right, making effort again and again. So initially it's this contrived kind of mind, especially bodhicitta. I focus more on bodhicitta, but it should be driven by great compassion. I try to do this, well, first of all, to move you in that direction, as I said, but also it makes us feel so much better. I mean, the best way to feel better is to generate great compassion, and of course, even better, bodhicitta. And it's really like an experiment. Try it. Do you feel better? Everything sucks. Life is terrible. Generate bodhicitta. How do you feel? And that's the first motivating aspect. So that's something I'm just mentioning. If you have any interest to participate in that experiment, I mean, if you're not part of that Sunday class, so then just on your own, continue, do exactly that. Make an effort in again and again generating bodhicitta and see how you feel. And if you feel good, since we're driven by self-cherishing, well, let's face it, then you're driven, like as homeless would say, be wisely selfish, and you generate compassion again and again. Anyway, that's just at the side. Now, but the science, they say, is like, wow, bodhicitta, you hear about it, you meet someone, it's like there's a totally different reaction. It's not like, oh, great, the Llama, okay, big deal. Or, well, teaching on Shantidas, there's a few verses. No, it's like, whoa, your main interest is that. So that is considered to be a sign. And of course, the best sign is having great compassion. All right. Then what follows is some explanation on hero nature. And again, it's very similar to what we had before. Hero nature, solitary realizer nature, just this affinity. Awaken that. If you have awakened that, then you're determined to practice the hero teachings, so solitary realizer, and then the same, of course, also with the Mahayana nature. So yeah, I've said it a few times. I think that's enough. All right. And one explanation that's also part of awakening Buddha nature or Mahayana nature is also that I highlighted that part, which I think is quite beautiful, because it's not just that. So I'll just read it. A practitioner who has awakened Mahayana nature constitutes a person who has cultivated great compassion. That's most important, but who's now highly determined to practice the Mahayana path, even though you haven't generated the Mahayana path yet, because you generated once you've attained bodhicitta. Once you've cultivated bodhicitta, spontaneous, that is uncontrived bodhicitta, once you've cultivated that, then you're on the Mahayana path. But you can practice the Mahayana path without having attained it. You can practice bodhicitta without having attained real bodhicitta. So anyway, someone who's cultivated great compassion. So just for those of you who are not aware of that, actually entering the Mahayana path, the gateway to entering the Mahayana path is bodhicitta. Once you have uncontrived bodhicitta, right, spontaneously arising, the spontaneously arising wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And I'm focusing, I'm stressing not just the wish to become enlightened. Well, that's easy. Yeah, I want to be enlightened because that's great. I want to be successful, so I want to be enlightened. That's not bodhicitta. No, you're so full of love and compassion for sentient beings. They're what's most important to you in your life. And in order to finally be most effective, you want to become a Buddha, because you are most effective as a Buddha. That's when you can be more effective than any other being. So therefore, when you have that aspiration, that sincere mind, then you have by definition entered the Mahayana path. But before you can generate this mind of enlightenment, you need to have this incredible compassion, this great compassion for all sentient beings, wishing not only for them to be free from all sufferings, from any type of restriction that keeps them from being liberated, but also the wish, may I be able to do it? May I be able to do that? May I be able to help them and assist them? So like I said, that doesn't mean if you have that mind and you don't have bodhicitta yet, you're not on the Mahayana path yet. But you have great compassion, you've awakened your Buddha nature, and now you're highly determined to practice the Mahayana path and become a Buddha. You're not able to endure any type of hardship for the benefit of others, right? I remember reading, I was like, oh, I love bodhicitta, it's lovely, great, it's so wonderful. And then remember, many, many years ago, I remember reading, as long as space endures, as long as there are sentient beings, I will also remain. And I was like thinking, oh, that long? So I remember thinking, oh no, that's forever. No. So for me, there was like a sense, yeah, becoming a Buddha. I mean, I had these moments of inspiration, maybe inspired by His Holiness and so forth. So I would be thinking like, oh yeah, I want to be like that. But the moment I came along that verse, that was like too long. No, not forever. I'll do it for some time. But then, come on, give me something new, something more exciting. Anyway, I still remember that. And it's still now, to be honest, if I really think about it, for like ever, that's all. Certainly there's that sense. Anyway, so it's important, therefore, to get a sense that however long it takes to endure any type of hardship and to be there until the end of time for all sentient beings, for the benefit of others. So that demonstrates intense diligence when engaging in the deeds of a bodhisattva, even if you're not a bodhisattva yet, but if there are deeds that are similar to that of a bodhisattva. So, okay, all right, that's just something that's mentioned on page 41. However, here it says there's a difference between Mahayana nature and Buddha nature. There's a difference. Whatever is Mahayana nature is necessarily Buddha nature, but whatever is Buddha nature is not necessarily Mahayana nature. So there's a difference. So they're not equivalent. For instance, the emptiness of the mental consciousness in the continuum of a person who has no interest in the Dharma is Buddha nature, but not Mahayana nature, right? So there's a difference. So in the debate, of course, I would ask you, what is the difference between the two? Is whatever is Buddha nature, Mahayana nature, or not? And in the debate, the way the debate is set forth, how it's usually done is like, quick, be answered, answer quick. So, like I said, as part of this practice of training our mind, we're trying to quicken our mind as well. So it's less in the text as much. In the text, you just take your time to read it. But the debate, it also there are all these little tricks. So especially when there are many people, right? You're there and someone is debating with you, and not just one person. Let's say everyone is surrounding you and you're the only person answering. And you're just sitting on the floor and everyone is right there, standing there. So it's already, that is kind of intimidating. So they're all kind of pounding at you. And then they ask you a question and then they say, come, chur. So which means be quick. So that's like your adrenaline is like flowing and you have to answer really quickly and you have to think and you won't really give a wrong answer because they're all pounce on you. So it's fun. It's fun, but it trains you to think really quickly. So that's just a psychological tool. It's all kind of, yeah, bringing in psychology here, like kind of like everyone else seems very self-confident, although they're not self-confident. I mean, what they're saying sometimes doesn't make sense, but the stronger they clap their hands, the more you think, oh, they know what they're talking about, even if they don't. And so to kind of go beyond that, keep your cool, be relaxed, don't get uptight, and then think clearly, no matter how many times they go, calm, answer, right? Take your time and then you give an answer. So that's really, really difficult. It's like keeping calm under pressure, although it's all fun, really, but you know, the self-grasping is there, so the self-cherishing is there, and that's all part of the study. Anyway, so like I said, here was the difference between Mahayana nature and Buddha nature. Be quick. So usually we need to take a moment to think. But here, well, likewise, it says here the mental consciousness and its potential. So even the potential is Buddha nature. That's also seen as Buddha nature, but it's mainly the mind itself. In the continuum of such a person is Buddha nature, but not Mahayana nature. So even the potential, someone has no interest in the Dharma, they have Buddha nature. Everyone has Buddha nature. But Mahayana nature, well, you have to have great compassion to have Mahayana nature. Well, then, I mean, actually, it's not really. I mean, if no one has no interest in the Dharma, it doesn't mean they don't have great compassion. But I mean, Dharma doesn't means like having interest in benefiting sentient beings. That's also Dharma. And so, person has no interest in helping sentient beings, no interest in others, has Buddha nature, but not Mahayana nature. All right, I think that's pretty clear. Yes, so neither of these are Mahayana nature, so neither the evolving nature nor the naturally abiding Buddha nature in such a person's continuum who's not interested in others and so forth. Well, they're not Mahayana nature. Okay, all right, so that's just something I wanted to talk about. Then there's another term that is used, something that also describes someone. It's not about awakening Buddha nature, but being definite with regard to a certain nature. So it's another term that you come across in the scriptures when it mentions Buddha nature being definite with regard to the nature of one of the three vehicles. So there's sentient beings who are definite with regard to the nature of one of the three vehicles. We had that before, and sentient beings who are not definite with regard to the three natures. So that was explained, where if you're definite, then no matter what teaching you encounter, you will follow either the Hira path or the Hira teachings or the solitary realizer teachings or the Mahayana teachings. And in case of some people, it's like, well, whichever they encounter first, that will be the teaching they follow. All right, so we've heard about that before. And then as the explanation continues, there is a verse that is given in a certain context. And I apologize, I'm just kind of throwing different bits and pieces at you. But like I said, I'm basing it on what we've studied and introduce some of the more important pieces. So there is this text, I mentioned it before, which most extensively explains Buddha nature. So if you're really interested in reading it in great detail, read Uttara Tantra, that is Maitreya's Sublime Continuum, which is available in English. There is definitely, I think, at least 2 translations. One by Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. One is by Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, and then there's another one, I forget now. I think it's called Buddha Nature. Forget now who translated it, but with a commentary, together with a commentary. Very beautiful, not difficult to understand. It's just using different examples, different analogies to explain what Buddha nature is. But there's this one verse, His Holiness cites it very often, and when studying Buddha nature, this is considered to be an extremely important verse, which is meant to establish or prove, if you like, present the reasoning why all sentient beings have Buddha nature. So the verse you find on page 43, it says, since the perfect Buddhakaya is all pervasive, since suchness cannot be differentiated, and since all sentient beings have Buddha nature, they all possess Buddha essence. Okay. So what is the meaning of this verse? All sentient beings possess what's called here Buddha essence. The word he uses is Buddha essence. That is, all sentient beings will attain the state of a Buddha. All sentient beings. Why? Because first of all, the enlightened activities of Buddhas is all pervasive. That is an interesting idea, which first is like, it takes some getting used to. But the idea everywhere there's a Buddha. Buddhas are everywhere. There's not like, oh, they cannot be in my room. My room is too messy, so there won't be a Buddha, or whatever is the reason, right? So no matter where, and the enlightened activity is everywhere. There are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, well, especially Buddhas, they're everywhere. And so if we're ready, then, well, the enlightened activities, they will manifest. There will be a teaching, there'll be guidance, definitely. So we don't need to worry that we won't become a Buddha. I mean, I don't know anyone who's like a great Lama, or I know great Lamas, but they never talk to me personally, so I won't become enlightened. We don't need to worry about that. And of course, that's something I tell people all the time. This idea, of course, there's a lot of emphasis on having a Lama. So I want to say something about that. Many of you know that, but just mention it again. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the importance of the Lama is stressed a lot, not just in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but that's the tradition we're following here. And so there's the emphasis on the Lama. And that is so easily misunderstood. It's even considered dangerous to a certain degree. It's dangerous if we misunderstand what does it mean to rely on the Lama. So I just want to say this much. It is so important. It is so important to rely on a Lama. In the sense, like what did I say in the beginning? In order to effectively, we need to be inspired. It is so important to have this joy of devotion. That is definitely extremely helpful. Not for the Lama. The Lama doesn't care. If the Lama is fully qualified, the Lama really doesn't care. So, of course, it's important to find a fully qualified Lama. So not to rush it. But it's this connection that is so important. It's like, it's your place of solace. It's your place of refuge. It's like when things really go wrong, there is your Lama. Sometimes this connection with the Lama, it's totally mental. In terms of my own Lama, I never meet my own Lama. I'm not even sure my Lama knows I exist. It's to that degree. I mean, just in terms of just conventional appearance, right? Yeah, this Lama has talked to me before, but this Lama knows so many people. So they've probably forgotten who I am, which I don't care about, just from appearance. But it's this mental connection. If I just think of my Lama, I'm happy. It reminds me, it's really bizarre, please don't misunderstand, but I remember when I was 12 years old, I was in love with a boy for the first time. I had no idea about anything. I was just in love with this boy. And in the end, we were going out together, which meant we held hands. That was it, right? And we actually once kissed on the mouth, but my best friend showed me with him how to kiss. So I was like, she's like, you have to kiss him. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it. She's like, I'll show you. And so they kissed, I watched them, and I did the same. So we just were like, for half a minute, and then I couldn't breathe and we stopped. So anyway, I remember I was in love with this boy. It was like just thinking of him and all my problems were gone. I remember that. I don't know how long we actually were like, I mean, we weren't really in love. It was just like a crush I had. But I only remember this time. That was because it was the first time in my life that I was just thinking of him. And I was like, oh, everything is okay. Who cares? It's that feeling. It reminds me of that. Thinking of my Llama, however things, there's this person, there's this incredible person, and there's no attachment involved. I mean, there shouldn't be. I mean, if there's attachment there, but since he doesn't know me, so it doesn't matter. It's not like, how could there be attachment? It's not like I'm ever being around this person. So the point is, therefore, it's just thinking of this person. It gives me so much joy. And when I receive teachings, there's so much joy. That's what's for me. And I could be totally wrong about it, but that's what it means for me, this guru devotion. Just thinking of this Llama, and it's like thinking my mind merges with the mind of the Llama, right? Just thinking of this Llama, visualizing possibly the Llama appearing as a Buddha, merging into me, becoming one with my mind. And it's like, wow. And it's so valuable. This feeling is so valuable. It's like the greatest refuge. And it's a personal connection you have with the living being. And if you consider this person to also be a Buddha, well, then you're connecting not just with this person, but also with the Buddha, with all the Buddhas. It's all the power of the mind. And therefore, like I said, it's not about being around this person. It's not around seeing them all the time and sleeping at the foot of their bed, or I don't know, like Milarepa and Mapa. Well, they didn't spend much time together anyway. Milarepa most of the time was building towers until he received some teachings, and then he left. So when I say if you have a path just with one person following their teachings, and the best offering, of course, is the offering of practice, then everything else doesn't matter. So that's so important. But of course, it should be someone qualified. It should not be an ordinary person, because then we look at them and they see this fault and that fault. I mean, our mind is conditioned that even if there's the Buddha in front of us, we see thousands of faults. But in that case, there is no fault. But then if a person has fault, it's a problem, right? It's a huge problem. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that the Buddha's enlightened activity is all around us. And we have access to it through another living being. I mean, actually, we shouldn't need this other living being, but that's just how our mind works. And so through this other living beings, there are that which brings us, that takes us towards this enlightened activities and puts us in touch with that. So that is important. The enlightened activity is all pervasive. It's all around us. And it is through our Llama, visualizing the Llama as indispensable or inseparable from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, that we get in touch, that we contact this or put ourselves in touch with this enlightened activities. That's one reason why we all have Buddha essence. And the emptiness of the omniscient consciousness of a Buddha and the emptiness of my mind are the same. The same in the sense there's no difference. In terms of its ultimate nature, my mind and the mind of a Buddha is not different. Right? It's not different. So therefore, my mind can become the pure mind of a Buddha. The emptiness is just the lack of inherent existence. And that is the same. None of them exist inherently. But one is full of stains and full of restrictions and limitations, and the other isn't. But really, on its ultimate level, there's no difference. That helps me to understand that I can become a Buddha. First, the Buddha activity is all around me, and I have access to it through my Llama. And this Llama connection is not a physical one, it's merely a mental one. And mental, I can do a mental connection everywhere. So just thinking of my Llama, practicing what my Llama teaches, that puts me in touch with this all-pervasive essence of all Buddhas. Secondly, my mind, however the balagan, however full of stuff my mind is, still in its ultimate, from its ultimate nature, from the point of view of its ultimate nature, it's not different from the point of view of the Buddha's mind. It's no different. And even on a conventional level, its deepest level, as Homer spoke about it this morning, on the deepest level, the clear light mind, my clear light mind, and the clear light mind of a Buddha, again, not much difference. Okay, my mind certainly doesn't reflect on emptiness or realize emptiness, but in terms of this clear and knowing nature, no difference. And even my coarse minds, clear and knowing, that's it, full of stains and full of stuff, but that essential nature is there and doesn't differ from that of a Buddha. So that's something we really need to reflect on. In terms of our self-confidence, I can become a Buddha, right? But when we apply it to others, all other sentient beings, like surrounding us in our visualization, to generate a closeness, the way we feel close towards a Llama and the Buddha, we should feel towards other sentient beings, because they're all these future Buddhas and their essence is also the same. So when I ask you initially to generate affectionate love, this feeling of closeness and acceptance, well, it makes sense. I'm not just making it up. They all have the same nature in terms of their culture of the mind, same, right? So it makes sense to have compassion. It doesn't make sense to see ourselves separate from other sentient beings. It certainly doesn't make sense. I mean, it's totally against nature. It's totally against reality. I mean, let's face it, having hatred, feeling isolated from others, it's got no basis in reality. And of course, the idea, I'm like limited, I can never become this, that, I'm so stupid. It's total rubbish. Doesn't make any sense. Really, when you look at how things exist, we've got this incredible potential. And like I said, the essence, the enlightened activity of the Buddhas, they're ever ready to assist us. My emptiness, the emptiness of my mind, the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, there's no difference, even on a conventional level. The basic nature is the same, being clear and knowing. And the mind of all sentient beings, since they lack true existence, they are endowed with Buddha nature, right? So because of this lack of inherent existence, therefore, the third doesn't really seem like a reason, but anyway, it's kind of seen as a reason here. So we can all become Buddhas. That's what it says in this verse. So don't forget this verse. It's so important. There's something from our own side, and there's something from the side of the Buddhas, right? They're ever ready to assist us, and we have everything to become a Buddha. That, in summary, is what this verse is saying. So it's really important. Then next, something that I mentioned is that there is this debate where someone says, but actually the Buddha did say that not everyone can become enlightened. The Buddha, because in other places the Buddha said you can't attain. There are some who can't attain enlightenment. So that's also mentioned here. And like I said, the study, the way we study, different aspects are brought in. So as you may remember, His Holiness also spoke about interpretative teachings. Yesterday, His Holiness talked about the teachings of the Buddha, which need to be interpreted, and the teachings of the Buddha that can be taken literally. It was interesting that His Holiness said that. It was in front of these great masters of the Pali tradition who probably don't assert this. So that was like a huge statement. They actually, in the Pali tradition, this distinction is not made really. I mean, maybe in some scholars, some masters would do it, but generally speaking, mainstream Pali tradition, as far as I understand, don't distinguish that way. But in the Sanskrit tradition, there's a lot of emphasis on teachings that need to be interpreted and teachings that can be taken literally. All right. So there's this whole teaching, this whole system. And so this is also introduced here because, well, it says, the Buddha himself said from the sutra, then he said that those who delight in vicious actions do not thoroughly pass beyond sorrow. There it is. Those who are evil, those who delight, who enjoy to engage in negative actions, they will not attain nirvana. Pass thoroughly beyond sorrow is just another way of saying, it's the English translation of saying attain nirvana. So actually, what is explained here is that the cause of beings who delight in vicious actions, it's page 43, is their having a hostile attitude towards My apologies. My apologies. It's again, the line is not good. I think my line in Dharamsala is better line out here. Anyway, okay, so I missed a few bits of what I said. I was probably frozen. Was I frozen for a few moments before I left? Okay, well, I was gone. All right, so here there's this sutra quote. Did you still hear the sutra quote? Then the Buddha said that those who delight in vicious actions do not thoroughly pass beyond sorrow, right? He said that. So he's basically saying those who like to do something negative, they won't become liberated. But actually, and this is what is explained then in the commentary on my, so Asanga, who's a disciple of Maitreya, he composed a commentary on the Sublime Continuum, in which he then explains they cannot be taken literally. What is explained here, that the cause of beings who delight in vicious action is their having a hostile attitude towards the Maya and Dharma. And in order to reverse this hostile attitude, the Buddha taught this sutra with the intent to indicate a different time. Indicate a different time. So the time here, it seems like the literal meaning of what the Buddha says is will never attain enlightenment. And the time that he's really meaning here is not right now. It'll take some time. So they won't right away attain enlightenment. So since all sentient beings possess naturally pure Buddha nature, it's not fitting that they never it introduces briefly, and that's done a lot. Many of the times it's mentioned that how do you understand, how do you know a sutra cannot be taken literally? How do you know it requires interpretation? Well, you know, because there's an intended meaning. There's always an intended meaning. There's a purpose for saying what is being said, and there's damage to the literal meaning of that passage. All right. So number one, there's an intended meaning. Number two, there's a purpose for saying what was said, and there is damage. There's logical damage to the literal meaning of that passage. So those three, if you study philosophy and you study in particular the difference between something that needs to be interpreted or not, you know what those three are. So in this case before, what is the intended meaning of the sutra passage? It's those who feel hostile towards the Dharma, in particular the Mahayana Dharma, will not attain Buddhahood for a long time, right? I mean, it will just keep us from becoming a Buddha soon if we have this hostile attitude. And there were a lot of people, of course, who felt the Buddha's teachings weren't taught by the Buddha because they appeared later, okay? There is like well, it's nowadays, I think it's changing maybe a little bit more interest of people from different traditions, also in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, more of an openness. But until not that long ago, there was a sense that, well, Buddhism in the Tibetan tradition was not even called Buddhism, it was called Lamaism because of the emphasis on the Lama. And of course, that's a completely wrong term because it is a teaching that was taught by the Buddha. And just because it didn't appear earlier, well, we know the reason for that. It's not a sign, it's not a sign or a proof that it wasn't taught by the Buddha, because it was taught in secret and therefore it didn't appear as a mainstream kind of tradition. So when people argue, and sometimes I meet people who say, well, the Mahayana was not taught by the Buddha. And that always reminds me, and I said that in the past, there was a statement, I think it was Heidegger who said it, I think he's an Austrian philosopher. Most Germans always think when there's a German name, they're German, but I think it's actually mostly they're Austrian then in the end. Anyway, so I think it was Heidegger, I think it was that, the philosopher Heidegger, he said something, and I love this statement, I really love this. When one of his students said, it's no wonder, it's not surprising that people thought that the sun revolves around the earth. And so Heidegger asked, why? Why do you say it's no wonder? Well, it looks like that. right? It looks like that. It looks like the sun is moving around the earth. And then his response was, Heidegger said, well, what would it look like if the earth turned around the sun? What does it look like? How does it look like? It looks the same. So we just assume from the way something appears that it's this way, and therefore it cannot be any other way. So similarly, when people say the Mahayana teachings were not taught by the Buddha because they appeared later, but if they appeared later only because initially they were taught to a few group of people, not to many people, and only later they became a mainstream kind of teaching, they have the same result. They appear later. So how can you, and a lot of scholars are therefore adamant. They say, no, in the scholastic tradition, I've been told that in some universities, it is taught that the Mahayana teachings came later and they were not taught by the Buddha because they appeared later. That's like a university saying, well, the sun revolves around the earth because it looks like that, right? That's like a university saying, no, our policy is not that the earth revolves around the sun, but the other way around because it looks that way. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's just me, but anyway, I always love this little account of Heidegger. But what I'm trying to say is still, the point is, there are a lot of people who may not like the Mahayana teachings, and if there's this dislike and this real aversion, well, Buddha said, you will not become enlightened for a long time. Makes sense. I mean, you're not interested. So in order to reverse such an attitude, the Buddha literally says that beings who delight in non-virtuous actions, and also on disliking the Mahayana, will not thoroughly pass beyond sorrow, that is to say, attain the enlightened state of a Buddha for a long time. However, no, literally says they won't. However, the Buddha says that will not attain the enlightened state of a Buddha for a long time. So he indicates a different time here. It's not the time like never, but not right away. So therefore, he intended to indicate a different time. And the purpose is clear with that. So was the purpose to lead sentient beings towards letting go of these negative views. And of course, what is the Sorry, it's almost time to stop, and I'll fix it once we're done. But anyway, you've probably missed out again what I said. So just to repeat it. Now, again, in terms of what the Buddha said with these words, a person who's got these negative intentions, negative attitudes will not become enlightened. The intended meaning is that they won't become enlightened for a long time. The purpose for saying what he says is for sentient beings to be motivated. If they want to become enlightened, if they want to become a Buddha, well, then don't let go of these negative attitudes of this, well, the negative attitude possibly towards the Mahayana, but also just negative attitudes, because you won't become enlightened, at least not for a long time. And the damage, and here the last one is the damage to the literal meaning of these words, is of course the fact that we have Buddha nature. Doesn't make sense, right? So therefore, with the teachings, you need to look, what is the intended meaning? Any teaching, what is the purpose of saying so? And the literal meaning of what was said. What is the damage to that? So this is the tool we receive. This is where reasoning comes in. That's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama says we need to apply reasoning just because the Buddha said so. The Buddha said things with a certain purpose. I mean, parents do it all the time, right? And in the beginning, they tell their children, I don't know, I mean, that's not literally true, of course. Or the Easter bunny will not bring any eggs, or what have you. I mean, saying things to kids just because in that moment it helps them to adjust their behavior, and eventually they find out it was all not true. So similarly, I mean, it's hard to compare the Buddha to certain educational methods, but there's some similarity here, right? It helps sentient beings, and that therefore not all teachings can be taken literally. Anyway, we're done this morning. We did have some meditation at the beginning, so I don't feel too bad about it. We did almost 20 minutes and I just bombarded you. I thought you're still fresh, a little bit of bombarding you. And now, after the break, we'll do some meditation. All right, so to digest everything we've done, and we've got now half an hour. So let's take a short moment to dedicate whatever virtue we've accumulated to listen to the Dharma and to contemplate it, internalize it to some degree. May this become a cause for us at some point to become fully enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings. All right, thank you, and I see you in half an hour. Okay, bye. I need to log out to fix my internet.
See you. Thanks.